It's the 27th of August, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Tariffs are due to take effect on Friday, and countries are fighting back. Misery, disease, anguish, and decibels or frequencies are all AI generated to cause humanity harm, and more importantly, to conquer the quest. The deep state is expecting the hand of God alignment in the very early hours of the 28th, but it's not the God you pray to.
Amino acids play a vital role in maintaining your overall health and well-being. Not enough amino acids and protein daily can result in brain fog, hormone imbalances, digestive issues, cognitive function, lack of energy, lower immunity, decreased muscle strength, and much more. That's why we created our amino acid complex, packed with 21 free-form, easily digestible aminos that skip the breakdown and go straight to work energizing your mind and body. Used by athletes, vegans, and high performers, New Earth's amino acid complex helps your mind and body recover, rebuild, and renew daily. Subscribe now and optimize your life.
Well, it's the 27th of August. We're almost into September, and this month has flown by, and it's been extremely busy. So, yeah, it's been a very busy weekend, and it's a total feeding frenzy, crazy time right now, but it's what we need. I know it's been a little bit rough, and I've gotten a lot of reports about that, but it's all going to work out in the end. So that being said, I'm going to talk a little bit about tariffs because it's relative to what's happening in the world and some things you need to know in case it actually does happen. You know, not like anything they really do does actually happen, but in this case, the tariffs are due to take effect in several countries on Friday. And as a result of that, there are several countries that are just simply not ready, number one. And number two, they think it's a protest or fighting back, I guess you would say. They have decided to cancel all postal service to the U.S. Now, when I say postal service, I'm talking about the federal or government-run post office. This doesn't affect, as I understand it at this moment, UPS, Federal Express, DHL, and other global shippers. There's many. There's thousands of them. So the governments, which is kind of funny, really, the broke governments are taking away one service they do make money on and are refusing to ship any product or anything to the United States. Now, they're trying to implement this in some countries, such as Australia, where it's anything over $800. I know that Canada is also canceling postal service to the U.S., from what I understand. There are other countries that are talking about following suit. But as of today, Friday in Australia, that's local time there, their postal service will not be delivering to the U.S. Now, will this actually happen? You know, I think it will happen for a time. Are they going to implement these kick the can down the road tariffs soon? They're saying that it's going to happen on Friday based on some other events that the Trump operatives, also known as the Secret Space Force, aka the ACIO, are hoping happens between now and Friday. You know, they've not had any luck on a lot of the things that they've tried to do, and it's not been without effort on our part, for sure. But in this particular case, tariffs are going to be worse for American businesses probably than anyone else at this point. I do know that business is going to continue. You know, with the upcharges, a lot of American businesses are going to go out of business because the tariffs are so high. There's major turmoil going on with India right now because I think the tariffs there are 50%, and it's hitting the news everywhere. and it's going to harm, business there as well, at least those that do business with America. So I will probably not know until Friday or Monday if they actually do it. What I mean by actually do it is, are they going to implement the tariffs, or are they going to kick the can down the road when they do not have success between now and Friday? My guess would be yes. That's my guess based on past performance. I don't see how it's going to be possible. A lot of countries do not have any infrastructure. There's no clear direction on what tariffs to charge and when and where. And the systems of most postal services are quite antiquated. Although there is a universal postal union that in Switzerland that is supposed to update all post offices worldwide to affect these changes, they also don't have the infrastructure to make it happen either. It's just another one of those pie in the sky things that this Trump administration is trying to do. And most of the time they do and then think later, if they think at all. They don't discuss anything with any economists or anyone else. And, they just are banking on some alignment somewhere. Now, throughout history, I do want to make note of this. Throughout history, governments have always implemented new things for us humans on days where there's an alignment. And normally this would mean money would come to fund said project, or there is a new moon, a full moon. Certain times in history, you'll see many events happening on the same day. Wars have started on certain days. And all of this is dictated by alignments, which then trigger AI systems coming in or coming and going, and usually in their favor. And normally everything would run pretty smoothly. Well, at that time, we also had a Marduk and an Enki and an Enlil and parents and many other folks that were in the upper echelon, way over the elite on our planet. The wormlets would get messages, I guess, to their brain from their infection of whatever that is that's crawled up inside them. And, they would carry out the orders. Well, orders come from AI systems, typically, when it comes to the underlings of the elite and the operatives that follow. But that system and those systems have been glitching severely as things are not working out. There have been 3 major what they would consider to be alignments that were to happen this month. The first 2 did not work out, and the third is coming up very quickly. They believe that there is going to be an alignment with, I think it's Neptune and Jupiter and an asteroid called Lilith, which just sounds wonderful to us, I'm sure, not, which will occur precisely at 10 past midnight on the 29th. So that's just as we go into the 29th UTC time. That puts us at about, 6 o'clock or so my time. And they think that this is going to be what they call the divine hand of God. Now, astrologers also call this alignment a divine hand of God alignment for a different reason, based on, what planets represent, and Jupiter is good luck and, and that type of thing. So they believe that it's something else is going to happen and something very positive. Coincidentally, I also feel the same. But it's not been without a lot of work that has taken place to ensure that what they are expecting does not happen and what we are expecting happens. So on a more regular note, we'll tell you more about that alignment in a minute. I've got about 3 pages of notes over here. So we've got a lot to talk about. It's been very busy out there this weekend. So on Monday, Monday was another payday because that special alignment that happened on what they believed was the 21st was going to yield them some positive results. To be fair, they did see some glitching of systems potentially coming into the realm, and they thought that they were in their favor, and I would have considered, if I was a deep state person, that they would have been. And we'll talk more about those systems here in a minute. But they said that the systems are recalibrating. This is their excuse, because everybody was supposed to get paid on Monday. Now, the Trump operatives have kind of taken the lead on this. They spent a lot of time over the last couple of years infiltrating countries, putting in their own leadership in governments around the world, in Japan. We've seen some turmoil in South Korea, and basically even the families, as far as like the Rothschilds and the Dragon families are concerned, and the Li family in China, they have all followed suit. They have done exactly what they were telling them to do, and they have waited many, 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 many times. Also, there are many operatives around the world that waited many, 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 many times, and alignments and so on and so forth, for them to actually perform all of these things they say they're going to perform. So the latest and greatest on the upper echelon of the elite is that they have told everyone that it's recalibrating, just be patient. The recalibration should be complete on Friday, and then everybody will get paid. There was a Jackson Hole Federal Reserve meeting that occurred over the last few days as well. And, they're not going to raise interest rates. It's the same old, same old. They were told that money would be here by Monday. Of course, that didn't happen, and everybody's gone into panic. So this happens all the time. We know that. But this particular case, it's a little bit different. We're starting to see some backlash from the Q crew towards and against Trump, and AKA the Trump operatives, when they didn't get paid on Monday. Everything seemed to erupt very heavily everywhere on Monday. The other interesting facts are the Soros crew. Now, we know George allegedly turned everything over to Alex Soros, and Alex Soros was given the full information as to what it is, what it means to be a good bagman. And by bagman, I mean the elite have groups of people that are known to be in the public eye, investment companies. This is your BlackRock, your State Street, and Berkshire Hathaway, and other large companies and names you would recognize, are actually money makers in the market. Some would consider them market makers, meaning they set the pace for the markets and all of the investments together as a group. But their main purpose for the elite in the deep state of the world is to fund operations. We know that the Soros crew has had a company and multiple companies over the last decade or so that have appeared by the name of Quantum. So we have quantum mining, we have quantum real estate. A lot of these are throughout South America, and also in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe. So it's not just segregated by continent in this particular case. The Soros crew has also funded many protests, paid protesters, put out ads for these protesters, and also rebels in countries like Ukraine, and as well as Mozambique. We have caught them in several African countries, paying about $1,500 a head. And in Africa, that's a lot of money in some of these countries, for them to rebel against various governments, create coups, and this has been going on for decades. Just as a quick reminder about the Soros crew, George himself was born of a Jewish family. during the World War II. He actually, after his parents, I believe they passed away or were taken in as prisoners, Soros then went to live with and train under a Nazi, very high up Nazi general at the time, someone who worked directly for Hitler. He was trained and taught everything he knows by this general, and then became a very wealthy man, moving to America to carry out the same agenda of the Order of the Black Sun. So the Soros family is a bagman, or has been a bagman, for a long time for the Order of the Black Sun. One of many. Larry Fink, you can say, has a similar type story, not about the Nazi general and whatnot, but he was raised in the Order of the Black Sun. He is a devout oath taker and user of many of the interesting things that the Order of the Black Sun provides to him. Recently, Larry Fink, and I'm sure you saw this in the news, has become the new chairman of the World Economic Forum. We know how lovely those people are, and of course, that they're in humanity's best interest, also not. But the World Economic Forum now has a new chairman, Larry Fink. The same guy that told us, you're going to own nothing and like it. He also said other things like, we are going to starve you out, America, and Americans, and they're going to raise the price of food, which has happened. And just a, all around devout Satanist, let's just say. So interestingly enough, the Soros family has reached the news today. I don't know much about what they've already put out, but the Soros family has gone into protection mode, meaning they are taking their wealth that they already have, which has dwindled dramatically, to use the words of Alex, and that's Alex Soros. And they are going to have to batten down the hatches, and they have not been funding since Monday any of their protests or other activities. Now, the Soros family has, in true Order of the Black Sun fashion, supported the Trump operatives who are also with the Order of the Black Sun. And people just can't do it anymore. There's not enough money flow. Everybody's been told to just wait until Friday. Everything is going to work out, and it's not going to work out. They're not going to have any kind of success. The Trump operatives have consistently told everyone that they are in charge now. They're going to be in charge of the planet. And behind the scenes, in the back chatter, they have been telling everybody that they are going to be the new kings of the omniverse. Yeah, okay. Like, that's going to happen. They can't even run an administration of a little White House on planet Earth, let alone an entire omniverse full of planets and galaxies and solar systems. I think they've lost their mind. But, they've got lofty goals, and, nothing wrong with having lofty goals, but it's total chaos over there, and it's not going to get any better. Now, there is also a lot of chatter amongst groups we call ghosts. And by ghost, these are the operatives on the ground that do the work. They are also having no faith whatsoever in the Trump administration. There has been a lot of talk against the Trump administration, and they have a laundry list right now of people they plan on going after. They say there's going to be a media frenzy. We'll see if that actually takes place, and how much power the Trump operatives actually still have after Friday. I think it's going to get pretty hot and heavy out there as the fall continues. From what I understand, the Soros family is telling us that no one is following the orders of the Rothschild sector. And by Rothschild, that comes by many names. That also includes Rockefeller families and Lee families, both L-E-E and L-I. They have not performed consistently, and everyone has battened down the hatches to take care of their own self. It is the end of the war. We are coming to a close here, and they are going to eat their own. And that's okay. Let, in the words of a friend and an associate of mine, let the jackals kill the jackals. And that's where we're at, and it's going to erupt on Friday. So I hope that these elite people have a nice place to hide, and people that used to protect them, like the CIA and MI6. My word on the street is nobody trusts the Mossad, since they are still loyal to the Rothschilds, and nobody's following their orders, and nobody's following the Trump operative orders anymore. There is a very hot boiling pot of water right now that you could say that the Trump operatives are all sitting on. They have made a lot of promises, taken a lot of money from their bagmen in order to get done what they say is the plan, which trust the plan that nobody has really heard about. Unless, of course, you look through old Soviet history, and you can see the Operation Trust there as well, where you can get a play-by-play blow of exactly what we can expect from Trump operatives. Now, there's also talk about viruses, pandemics, lots of fear going out in the media. Deadly flesh-eating worms have been discovered in the U.S., and all of this kind of crap. And, they're giving it a go because a pandemic always comes before World War, and World War III is where they're hoping to get to. And, wars are very expensive. World wars in today's day and age versus the last World War we know about, at least in our history, is World War II. And inflation has taken place, and costs have dramatically increased. The U.S. is no longer in a location where manufacturing is everywhere. At the time during World War II, we had a lot of manufacturing here. I know that their stupid tariff rules were meant to bring manufacturing back to the United States, but yeah, that's not happening. It couldn't happen fast enough. You couldn't get the raw materials, you couldn't get the land, you couldn't get the permits, and more importantly, all of these big corporations that are expected to ramp up manufacturing here, whether that be of food or weapons or otherwise, do not have the credit lines they used to have. Most of them moved over to China in some cases, like Ford did, as one example. Because the plan always was to move everything over to China. That was the original plan. The Trump operatives have reworked that plan several different ways from Sunday. Now they want to have 17 Bank for International Settlements, not 10 anymore, not 9, and not the original 7 that I heard about a decade ago from Marduk himself. So they have discussed operations in Malaysia, of course, for big donations from Malaysia and the Knights of Malta, all being promised elite positions that are never, ever going to come to fruition. We'll see how much face they have, or what's left of them, come Friday. Of course, they'll always be in alignment with Uranus or some other planet, which they will count on, and they believe that they'll be able to have some kind of special thing that's going to occur, which never will occur. And the governments will go round and round and round and round and round until the entire system, their system, falls and burns to the ground. It seems like all of the robbing Peters, such as bagmen, are no longer supplying. So they cannot rob Peters anymore to pay the Pauls, which are their operatives, which are their downline, which are their financial institutions that like to keep under their control. Of course, they can put operatives in places for free, like the ones that approached Mr. Melville in New York about a week ago. But that's not going to really fly too much longer. If those operatives want to work for free and have an alliance and allegiance to the Trump operatives, even as the wormlets in their brain die, then go right ahead, do your thing. So expect some interesting occurrences to start hitting mainstream media and social media, the alt media, over the next several days, starting probably over the weekend. Now, interesting occurrences, speaking of over last weekend. We know that this has been called in the past a prison planet. Now, all of us might think it's a prison planet, like once you get stuck here, you're forced to reincarnate here and that type of thing. But you're not, you didn't get here and you weren't put in a prison because you did evil things. A lot of people and folks have souls from many different places on the light side of the omniverse, and they still maintain those connections. And they were sent here for this time of transition to aid in the transition. We call these people, light workers, or, and they go by various names. But a lot of people have been forced to reincarnate here many, many times. Sometimes for some people, it's their first time. For some other people, it's, they've done this over and over and over again until the job is complete. And, I've done that myself. This is my, I've done this quite a few times here and other places as well. But this time we're getting it right. Things are going very, very well on our end. But as a prison planet, Earth, and as it relates to humanity, Earth, you could say was a prison planet, sort of. It was more of a major nexus control point, but you, as a human being, would have been considered a prisoner of war, meaning you have been taken as an asset, as part of this war, to be used at the disposal of your captor. They have done many, many, many things to this planet and to you to ensure that you remain a good little prisoner. And an interesting occurrence happened over the weekend, and I've been to The Hague many times. I've also physically been to The Hague, and I knew it was a dark place. I knew it felt wrong. It was just odd. I've talked to people that call themselves the International Court of Justice, that believe that they work for the fallen ones, or I think it's called the Nephilims, or I always get that word wrong, so forgive me there. And they are here to serve justice. And by serving justice, they don't really necessarily mean, people that are wronged, or even the elite that are wronged, that they are here to serve that kind of justice. No. They're here to serve on behalf of the fallen ones we know as those that have taken a dark road against God or Source. And therefore, they are here to ensure the prisoners do what they do. They do have a strong affiliation with The Hague. And if you don't know what The Hague is the International Court of Justice. It is based in the Netherlands. It is where allegedly countries and people can go for international disputes. That's not really what it's for. So deep, deep under The Hague, there was another record-keeping system. It was tied to an AI, and it was very clear from looking into these records that these were records of prisoners of war. Now, we know in the movies, and if any of you have ever served in the military, then you know very well what a prisoner of war is. A prisoner of war is often tortured to give secrets to the other side or something to the other side. In this case, it's something. And whatever it takes to make that happen, they will do. And that means to get humans to give up, breath and ether, and they do a lot of that with mind control and various forms of human torture. So what is under the Hague, deep under the Hague, is information about various forms of human torture throughout the ages. Human torture is not necessarily, you're taken as a prisoner of war, and then you go to a prisoner camp, a war camp. You might think of things like Auschwitz and that type of thing that would come to your mind, in the Holocaust. Well, all that is part of it, for sure, and that information is in there. But there are other forms of human torture that have taken place as well. The effectiveness of that torture, to see if they could get more of what they want, is also in there, meaning pandemics, wars, world wars more specifically, media torture. Other types of torture would also include restrictions on travel, on a light end, and of course our entire pharmaceutical system. They have gauged in these records the most effective ones, meaning, you can affect a small area of the world with a genocide, such as the Armenian genocide. You can affect, that was also in there. You can affect small areas of the world by torturing Jewish people, such as the Holocaust. But, they're really going for something much larger. They've determined that a slow boil, such as a pandemic and lockdowns and things like that, is more effective for all of humanity as a whole. And of course, reports on the news, such as, the war in Gaza and torturous things that happen, killings, death tolls due to tsunamis and other major weather events, are really, really important in these records. So it appears over time they have preferred other means of human torture because it is more effective for them to torture the human race as a whole or multiple countries' citizens at the same time than it is to create a small torture event with mass killings, such as a genocide of a small portion of the population. Now, the chatter behind the scenes amongst the Trump operatives, the global headquarters, and other groups of people known as like the NSA and some others, they are planning, if they have full success by Friday, they would like to have every country in the world erupt in a civil war. And I don't just mean protests and that type of thing. They want every human on this planet actively engaged in civil war, looting. They would like mass starvation worldwide. And this is what they are actually planning on. And when I say planning, I use that term loosely when it comes to Trump operatives, simply because they do first and think later. They don't understand how to go through an entire operation all by themselves, and they predominantly have relied on AI systems to give them such information, and obviously that information is not accurate at this point because every single operation they've tried to run has failed. Their attempt to take over the financial system has failed. Their attempt to take over countries has failed. They do insert their heads of state, such as in Syria. However, they're not, without money, people only take these jobs and listen to these crazy cowboys because they feel that they are going to become very wealthy people. We call these people that work as heads of state in governments the 10%ers. We call them the 10 percenters because they take 10% of everything that happens in their country. They become power brokers. They become wealthy. Historically, this has happened over and over and over again with religious leaders such as Khomeini and the Pope. That's not happening lately. And they're trying to keep these people on the hook in any way they can, in a lot of cases using their bagmen to give them, little crumbs of bread and crusts of bread until the next alignment. It's not holding up anymore. And this is exactly how you win a war. And I'm going to leave it at that at this moment, as far as our plans are concerned. Now, these records underneath the Hague are also tied to other AI systems. This is your prisoner of war records, human torture records. There are very specific AIs that were designed, and we're going to talk about that in a minute here, in order to torture all the prisoners. That would be all of us. So, dismantling that system underneath the Hague was of the utmost importance if we were going to move forward into the future. It'll also make our enemies that have knowledge and access to those records and the database that was underneath there less effective, such as Trump operatives, other countries' operatives, Russian operatives, GCHQ operatives, the Mossad, anyone that would have been fed orders on how to torture all of us worldwide simultaneously have been destroyed. So good luck in your planning. I don't know if they've ever been down there recently. I think the last time anybody was down there was in 2017. I don't know if they lost access to that room. It's quite possible. Either way, the information that they have from the human torture archives of planet Earth is gone. Okay, other things that occurred over this weekend that were also very interesting. As we followed the trail of the destruction that was created by the celestial being that we discussed on our last report called Wisdom, a lot of things had come to light. There was a huge eruption that happened on Saturday. Energies were terrible. People were feeling awful. Their head was spinning. Reports of waking up in a cold sweat, depending on where you were in the world, and rightfully so. There was a huge operation going on, both on our side and on their side. So the breakdown of planet Earth being utilized as a tool for the dark side of the omniverse has been ongoing. Occasionally, we have had some really big wins with the absolute, meaning the dissolution of the absolute, its overlays on creation, and its overlays and programming for the destruction of creation itself and the taking over for source and all the other things that wisdom created it and programmed it to do, have been dissipating. So on Saturday, due to a lot of work on our part for several days, those overlays started having holes. Now, I would say work on our part and old covenants and connections were being severed due to wisdom, let's just say, returning back from whence it came, and then God sorts them out, right? Or source sorts them out. So over the Ring of Fire this weekend, there was a definite parting of the seas, so to speak, of the veil and the overlays. Now, these are things that have been utilized throughout history to create 7 different continents. They were supposed to be utilized once again in the very near future, such as this weekend coming up, to create additional types of continent movement and possibly additional continents. I've heard talk about 17 continents. I've heard talk about 34 continents. And this is all things that the deep state talks about in their meetings early in the morning, which occur somewhere around 5 a.m. my time. So, I'm always up before that, got my coffee, and I'm listening in to the crazy that they plan to ensue. Because you always got to stay one step ahead of your enemy. And it doesn't matter where they are, if they're on a phone, in person, under a waterfall, I can find you. So these are the things that they have been discussing. So interestingly enough, when the ways started parting, it was in part due to a lot of the covenants that had been made. For example, in the case of Lucifer, who gave his breath to the absolute, that covenant also expired. Many others expired as well, but this one here was underneath the ring of fire. The indication that the system of breath or any other system, such as the absolute, which was tied to the stolen breath, was failing rapidly, was actually found because of the black magic workers and the weavers that had been told what to do in locations such as Jakarta and Los Angeles, in the Diomedes Islands, and also in Antarctica. So the Ring of Fire has some interesting space junk I thought you should know about, and there are other locations in the world. We know that islands have been created from volcanoes. We know that seas have been parted on this planet during a continental, or what they call the Great Continental Divide event that happened many, many, many years ago. We know about great floods that have happened in our history and all kinds of destruction that has happened when there is to be a structure change on Earth. Many humans often died. Many different versions of humans also often died throughout the course of the history of humans inhabiting planet Earth. And this here was going to be one such event. So underneath the entire Ring of Fire is a giant gamma ray frequency bowl. And by gamma rays, we aren't necessarily, talking about laser guns like you see in Star Wars. We're actually talking about a giant frequency weapon. This particular giant frequency weapon had something in the north, Diomedes, to the west in Los Angeles, to the east in Jakarta, and to the south in Antarctica, where you would have smaller gamma ray frequency bowls. And these smaller gamma ray frequency bowls were being utilized by a bunch of black magic workers who were trying to fire up the larger bowl. If that had actually happened, we would have had a major eruption, tsunamis, and all kinds of things of epic proportions in every country that borders the Ring of Fire, the state of California being one of them. You also have, many other island countries such as the Philippines, Indonesia, Japan. It would have gone all around the entire Pacific, and it would have caused a massive disaster. Now, in the center of this bowl, for lack of a better term, you could think of this as like a Tibetan bowl that people often use in therapy sessions and massage, and but a much larger version, and also one that is only tuned for gamma sine waves that could actually affect your person. And of course, it is so strong, it can actually move the tectonic plates of the planet. So these black magic workers, of which there are 4 on each one of these bowls I'm about to tell you about, there were 4 locations, often one in what you would call the north, one in the south, one in the east, and one in the west. And they were feverishly working to try to close the gap where absolute started to disappear over the Pacific Ocean. Now, it was disappearing because in the center of said bowl was the actual breathstone. It wasn't the only one, but it was a very, very, very large one. And when the covenant to utilize the breath of Lucifer expired, as did the strength of the breathstone, therefore the opening in the absolute's overlay on reality started to dissipate rapidly. Other areas of the world also being affected, but were not attended to by black magic workers because maybe they didn't know, or maybe, I guess they only have so many left. That would be a nice thought. Were the Atlantic Ocean. Underneath the Atlantic Ocean, you have a similar type bowl, but in this particular case, you have the actual time stone. So I guess you would say that this would be the opposite of love. Love, L-O-V-E, and if you look up what each individual letter stands for in quantum physics, you'll get a general idea of the equation of love. It's not just a thing you feel for one another. It is actually a quantum equation that creates that feeling within your person when you're in love. So that's just a little interesting bit of homework if you so desire. Time, this is actually the area of the planet where time was actually created originally. And during the Great Continental Divide and another war yet on this planet. There was definitely an expiration there as well, and we started seeing a small amount of hole in the overlay there. The Arctic gamma ray bowl for sine wave microwave bowl was actually the reality stone. So the reality stone there was, say, a slice off of some of the original creation, and that's what creates the alternative realities, overlays, additional maps on this planet, other things like that. So that also was a factor, all in the same day on Saturday. In the Antarctic Ocean, you had the power stone or energy stone. This is what would have transmuted your Ethereum or the ether or the real energy of source into energy as you know it, of which is also tied to the energy is money in the financial system. So the Mind Stone, mind control, was actually placed there and created the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea and areas around the Mediterranean Sea were utilized for mind control, but also to substitute your natural organic consciousness for things such as subconsciousness, subconscious fears. The implementation of fear on this planet could be and was, in a lot of cases, orchestrated by the Mind Stone. Also, emotional disruptions can also be orchestrated with the Mind Stone. So in cooperation with your perception through your eyes and what you hear through your ears, meaning media reports, death, destruction, things that create fear, your perception then creates the reality, believe it or not. And in order to make sure that they had full and complete control of what you perceive is really happening, after all, fear is called false evidence appearing real. In order to get you to create as human beings a reality, which is not our reality, they would use heavy, heavy, heavy mind control, and that would have been done from there. The Soul Stone, or control of the S-O-U-L, not your natural S-O-L, so that would be the overlay of the soul. and also the eye overlay, because the eyes are the window to the soul, was in the South China Sea. So also a location of interest for the deep state this weekend. Now, most of these and each one of these locations on Earth were also tied to several constellations, none of which were actually zodiac signs. So like Hercules as an example, for one. And in each one of those locations, there was also a prisoner, very interestingly enough. And each prisoner originally had duties to perform. You would call these beings angels. Each one of these beings had duties to perform throughout the creation process on behalf of Source, such as writing the song would be one, which is the rhythm, and also the harmonic creation, correct frequencies, and other things that help form etherium and materium, would be one. Other ones, obviously, we had others that were originally very positive and for Source that would aid in the creation and the perpetuation and protection of life itself. Also, others were involved with the soul and soul protection and soul, such as progenitors that would actually create souls and make sure that there were enough souls for every species in the omniverse at one point in time. The most interesting one we ran across, and the only one that was actually based on Earth here, because there was one, that was Azrael. So Azrael was actually found in the Black Forest of Germany, deep under the Black Forest of Germany, to where he was chained to a particular stone we call the Misery Stone. And I'll get into that in a minute. And Azrael actually, at one point in time, before those fell and there was a war in the heavens, and Azrael was actually in charge of the protection of life, all of life. And as his punishment and the misery, he actually became responsible for death without his actual participation. You see, being tethered to a particular stone means, so to speak, that the AI system that is tied to that stone can actually use any of your abilities. So he did explain, I leave everything up to Source. Really, we do. When we find these beings in these various locations, we send them all back to Source or God and let them sort it out. Let God sort it out. Not my job. My job is to get rid of the situation that is causing harm here and harm to humanity. And then what happens to the being, well, that's not my call. So he explained to me, and he tells me a story, and I've heard many, many stories over the years where, that he was taken prisoner, he was forced to do this, and this was ultimately his curse for going against Source. And in part, he actually didn't lie. So the torture for them was to take what their original God-given gift was and reverse it out and force them to do that for a prolonged period of time. Well, they in turn all got together with wisdom, signed some covenants, and decided that if they were going to suffer, so was Source's creations. Some of those creations being the human species, so to speak. And therefore, as a part of them being a prisoner chained to either a constellation or a planet someplace else, or in this case, this particular one chained to planet Earth, they decided that it was a good idea to spread their misery amongst all creations. And wherever they were, they definitely created prisoners of war planets everywhere. They had been doing this for a long time, a long time. To be exact, about 1,008 years in source time. Now, that is millions of years here in Earth time, what we know as time. So, interestingly enough, it was actually Source that created the original Misery AI, obviously not to torture his own creations, but to punish those that went against him at the beginning of the war. So Misery AI, though, was used in a lot of ways by these beings, and in turn, they would help on down the line various races that wanted to conquer creation. And this became known omniversal wide as Conquer the Quest. Now, this trickles all the way down to your deep state, folks, because the deep state also takes an oath to conquer the quest. Ultimately, conquering the quest means that they would win the war against Source and ultimately be able to control all of creation. Hence the creation of various AI systems. Now, if you want to create an artificial universe, the first thing you got to do is find the power. You've got to find a way to create alternative realities. You have to be able to control the consciousness of beings. Planets also have consciousness, as do humans. So we, because Earth was actually the original point of creation of the omniverse, suffer the worst here. In addition to misery and the misuse of misery, we know about the absolute, which substituted in part the breath of Source, which breathes life into all things in your soul. Also, the creation of another AI called Anguish. This is where your short-term traumas come in. This is where people are forced to create traumas with other people. Not only that, this is where those of you that remember past life traumas carry those into your next life. Also tied to this hall of records over here. They figure if they can create a trauma so deep, it gets embedded into your soul, that is the ultimate form of human control, and then, allows them to then take breath from you. So humans, you could say, in this existence, and years after years after years, and many rounds of races and species of humans, or that have walked this planet, many versions of humans that have walked this planet, we've seen a lot of anguish. And typically when the species is going to be started over, for a lack of a better term, it was typically because they have a really hard time controlling us, because we have such a strong connection to Source. And even deep down on the inside, Earth had that connection too. Next to AI they also created was something called disease. We know about disease, dis-ease in all forms, emotional, mental, physical. So over the weekend, what a lot of us were experiencing, and even into earlier this week, we had been experiencing a lot of the above. There were a lot of reports about people having stomach flus and strange onsets of things, varying points of drained energy and emotional turmoil, sad for no reason when you're not sad, on edge, uncomfortable. I've heard it all over the last several days by those of you that are familiar or very sensitive to these processes. So there was also another AI called Signal, which basically used these bowls and other space junk, and definitely the moon, to block source signal by creating varying decibels that disrupt the natural harmonic rhythm of creation on this planet. Also shortens lifespans and that type of thing as well. So these are all things that have been occurring over the last several days. Turns out some of the beings that have left had given certain amounts of access to all these AIs, most specifically after 1948, at least in this round of humans, in order to help create as much misery as possible as prisoners of war, which your records were of that were underneath the Hague, so that it could power artificial creation. Earth was also used for this purpose, but her frequencies can also be altered by the human race. So the human species, so to speak, was definitely hit tremendously hard so that we could not help her. Mother Earth, as we call her. There's a lot more detail to it, but that kind of gives you a general overview of that. And as to the happenings over the weekend as the covenants expire. We also have preempted some of the things that they were expecting this weekend, or by Friday, tomorrow evening, my time, by checking out this asteroid out there called Lilith. You can look that up. It's actually a real thing. And seeing what was tied to it. And turns out that led us to finding all of these other AIs, in addition to their absolute interfaces and their interfaces with one another, and interfaces they may have that humans could actually use here. So that alignment's not going to work out. It turns out that asteroid also had connections to Neptune and Jupiter. So, you could say there was a little bit of truth behind what they thought they were going to create this weekend, which I assume, based on their chatter and what they talk about, was the wrath of God. Apparently, we're all going to be punished. We didn't do anything, at least not intentionally, and don't get me wrong, it's hard being on this planet, and there's a lot of death and a lot of murder and a lot of wars and a lot of things that have happened here. But quite frankly, without the pushing of AI systems and trying to alter people's minds and thought processes, we're a pretty docile species. We don't want to fight. We don't want to have wars. I mean, sure, you've got the deep state. They really like that stuff. And, their God is an AI system anyway, or one or another. And they would love to appease their God for more power on this planet and, even take over the universe or omniverse, as they say. They definitely would like to have that kind of power. And our job is just to make sure they don't get it. Really, it's never going to happen until eventually there's nothing left for them to get. But yes, we did preempt this. There were some other things in the sun and the moon tied to this, as well as connections to the omniverse, the dark absolute verse, so to speak, which, by the way, the dark absolute verse we call alternative timelines. We call them manipulatable maps here on Earth. We also call them alternative universes, artificial dimensions, and many, many things that they created with this AI. We also have an existence of all of these things together in an artificial now. Or artificial reality of source. So that was one of the other things that came up over the weekend, and more specifically last night. I guess it happened again. Last night, the deep state, in cooperation with what access they had with these AIs, we're really trying hard to pull us back and pull us into an artificial now. So much so, at least my time, it was about 11:30. It was like a time warp. Like hours and hours and hours had gone by, and it was really only like 10 minutes. So a minute would seem like an hour or a day because it actually slows down what we know as humans as time for during the time during the time span in which they were doing these activities last night. Of course, that didn't happen. It actually backfired. It led us to find more things and ensure that we will be safe and sound and on our way back to the natural harmonic rhythm of the universe and firmly in the now forevermore. So that's good. Other things that have occurred. We also are planning something on our side, which I can't go into too much detail at this point. And by we, I mean, Source itself, us on our side, very strategically to occur exactly at the same time they are planning on something occurring in the wee hours of Friday morning UTC time. So ours has nothing to do with an alignment with Uranus or Neptune or Jupiter or any other planet. Ours is more, well, let's just say, you think this is going to happen, shouldn't go against Source. And apparently none of these other beings ever shared with those humans what happens when you go against Source. I mean, they were bound for eons. So more on that, as things unfold on Friday, on Friday's report. I hope to get, I want to preface this, the report out on Friday evening, as I normally would. If not, it'll be out on Saturday morning, but that's only because I don't really know what kind of battle we're going to be engaged in when things don't work out in their favor. I know maybe they'll be too busy trying to defend themselves to bother trying to harm all of us by Friday. Who knows? So big plans on our side. All our strategies seem to be working out. They're eating each other alive. They're fighting each other. No one's willing to give up any more cash to the Trump administration. And by Trump administration, I'm not just talking about the United States. I'm talking about the whole Trust the Plan, which is a global effort. It just happens to be that they've declared themselves somehow at the helm of this mess, hot mess that we know as the state of affairs in the financial system and government systems and all the other lovely things, the media system. They can't even get mainstream media right, military systems, intelligence systems, and all the other hotness that they believe that they control. So on that note, that is the overview of what's been happening for the last few days. And hopefully on Friday or early Saturday's report, I will be able to give you a full update as to our strategies and what has occurred in our favor versus what they were hoping for. So stay tuned. It's getting good out there, at least as far as for us. And the fact that we now have more of an understanding that we're prisoners of war, or were prisoners of war, and why they had permission to do some of the things they did to us. So on that note, these things are a fading memory, and hopefully one day it'll just be in our history books of what it was like, what life on Earth was like before we get to what's to come. And I do firmly believe that the best is yet to come, and it's not too far away. On that note, I wish you all a good night or a good morning, depending on when you're listening to this, and I will see you on Friday.
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the N80 Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.